In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to learn a brand new language from scratch this coming year, even if you have no idea how to go about doing it. You see, after learning 8 languages myself, teaching tens of thousands of students, and writing language books that have sold over 1 million copies, I've realized something pretty huge. People don't quit because language learning is hard. They quit because no one ever showed them how to begin, and the whole thing just feels a bit confusing. So today I'm going to show you why anyone can do this, even if you've never learned a language before, the simple step-by-step way to actually start, and how to keep going when life gets messy and motivation disappears. But first, let me tell you about the language I almost learned and then spectacularly forgot.
เข้าใจภาษาพูดภาษาไทยได้นิดหน่อยโอเค
Here's something people don't warn you about when you start learning a new language. It's not the starting that kills you, it's month 2. At least that's why I almost nailed Thai, but no. So a few years back, I spent 2 weeks in Thailand doing a full immersion study trip. I'm talking daily lessons, conversations with locals, flashcards, podcasts, the works. By day 14, I was having half-hour-long conversations in Thai, and I felt unstoppable. Then I came home, and within 3 months, I couldn't remember how to count past 5. It was like the language had evaporated from my brain, all of that work, all of that progress gone, and it sucked. But it taught me 2 things I will never forget. First, I didn't really have a reason to learn Thai or keep going in the first place. It was a fun experiment, not something I deeply wanted. So when it slipped, I didn't even fight for it. Learn from me and do yourself a favor. Ask, why do I want this? Why do I want to learn this language? And slap that reason on the wall in your language learning zone, wherever that is. Make it stare at you every day so the dream feels real. Second, and this is the big one, I hadn't built a system. I built a sprint, and sprints don't survive month 2. Truth be told, beginners don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they attack learning like January gym memberships. Big energy, big goals, and then life shows up and everything falls apart. But the method I'm about to show you doesn't collapse. It's built for the long haul, the one that actually gets you there. Day 1 of your new language already? Calm down, you've jumped the gun. Let's rewind before you crash this thing. See, before day 1, there is day 0, and day 0 has one mission: stack the deck in your favor. Because the fastest way to wreck your new language learning project is waking up every day trying to decide what to study. What am I going to study today? So the first day is not about study at all. It's about preparation. You're going to build a little language learning nest that makes it ridiculously easy to show up every day. Here's how. First, give your language a home base, one calm spot where you can focus. Your desk, your sofa, your favorite chair. So your brain thinks, this is where we learn languages, right here. Then create one folder on your desktop, on your computer, where everything lives. Your language course, your notes, your audio, your dictionary. So you tap one thing and you're in, instead of wandering through apps and somehow ending up on Instagram and 30 minutes later, you know how that goes. Next, choose one main course or textbook that you're going to use and stick to it. I don't want you downloading 15 apps on your phone, just one course, one clear pathway that you're going to follow from beginning to end without getting distracted. That's one of our story learning courses. Great, but it could be any good beginner resource. Even a textbook, they still work. Anything that gives you interesting and natural stories or dialogues that you're going to be able to read about people and people talking and simple stuff. For example, our story learning courses, they're based on stories. They follow the story of 3 friends who go on an adventure, and they have dialogue so you can listen to people speaking as well as the story, and it has audio so you can listen along. Lots of textbooks, most courses these days have this kind of thing in them. Here's the point: switching tools, jumping from one course to the next, is the quickest way to confuse yourself. So pick one thing, and whatever it is, commit to it. Third, you're going to make a 5-minute backup plan for the days when you just can't be bothered. Because trust me, those days are going to come, and you may as well realize and accept that you're human and you're going to have low energy some days, and have a plan for those days. So find a couple of things you genuinely enjoy, a travel vlog, a song, a funny YouTube channel, and fold them into your tiny rescue menu. You can re-listen to a story you've already read. You can read a short dialogue in one of my books. You can name 5 things in your room, write a silly sentence, or hit one of those YouTube videos that you've saved. I personally like to make a separate YouTube account for each language I'm learning, and then the algorithm just gives me videos in that language, which makes it for an easy kind of go-to fix if I ever want to do something easy. This is your backup plan. Nothing here is for studying. It's just your safety net, because tired you won't make good choices. So set it up once and then autopilot takes over. The beauty is that autopilot doesn't just stay at your desk, it travels with you. Those little pockets of dead time, waiting for a bus, sitting in a cafe, standing in a queue, they're absolute gold for language learning if you can actually get online. And that's where things often fall apart, because there's nothing more painful than going on a trip, traveling, landing in a new country, walking out of the airport and realizing your phone is basically a brick. Been there. Once in Turkey, I spent half my morning wandering around looking for a SIM kiosk that didn't exist anymore. So these days I use Saily, who are kindly sponsoring this video, and you can actually get a discount with Saily if you use my code OllyRichards at checkout. Now, what is Saily? Saily is an eSIM app that gives you instant mobile data in more than 200 countries. No store, no paperwork, no queue. You literally land at your destination, tap, and you're online. You got data. Happy days. And for language learners, this is huge because it means you can look up phrases, message your tutors, arrange for a coffee meetup, everything you need to actually use the language on the ground. Plans start from just a few dollars, and if you are traveling anytime this year or you just hate messing around with airport Wi-Fi, well, Saily makes the whole thing ridiculously easy. So use my code OllyRichards for 15% off your first data package. Now, let's talk about how you actually go about studying once your language setup is in place. When you're brand new to a language, it's tempting to jump straight into speaking. You memorize a bunch of words and you start hunting for grammar rules, but your first job is simpler than any of that. You just listen. And by listen, I mean drench your brain in sound. It needs time to get used to the language, the rhythm, the melody, the way the sentences move. So everything you learn later has something to latch onto. Think about how kids do this. They hear thousands of hours of the language before they ever say anything. What you're doing here is giving yourself the same advantage. All you need at first is a tiny spark, something you can actually recognize. This is not to say that adults learn languages in exactly the same way as kids, because we don't. But it's instructive to recognize that kids spend years listening to their native language before they get good at speaking it. So we should do something very similar. Here's what to do. Every day, 5 or 10 minutes, whatever you got, choose one short audio where someone speaks clearly and listen. It could be the audio track that comes with your beginner course, a mini podcast, a short story. Our books, for example, all come with audio. You just press play. Listen a few times, let it wash over you, and pull out 5 or 6 words that keep showing up. It doesn't matter if you don't understand everything yet. We're priming your brain with sound. Even as a beginner, I want you listening to things that you might not even fully understand yet. Now, if you've done your homework properly, it should be at the right level for you. If you're a beginner and you've got a beginner's course, then this audio that you're going to play should be at a level that you can start to understand or start to grapple with. And you're going to listen over and over again. And as you listen, what you'll probably find is your brain starts to notice certain words that keep popping up, words that are repeated. And generally in language learning, if words get repeated, they're quite important. So what I want you to do is, as you're listening, just pull out 4 or 5 words that keep showing up. And I want you just to write them down in a notebook, into digital flashcards. Doesn't matter. We are listening, noticing, and recording. Tomorrow, you're going to go back and listen to that same clip again and notice how it feels a little bit less foreign this time. You're going to recognize a little bit more. That tiny loop here of listen, notice, and capture, repeating a couple of times in subsequent days. This is your whole job at the beginning. Very different to how you studied at school, right? Where everything is studied and dissected and learned. We are just priming our brains, just like kids do when they first get exposure to their native language. Remember, you don't need to understand everything yet. You're building a sound map, a feel for how the language flows. In the first month of learning a new language, this is what I do. Every day, I put on audio on my walks at the gym, on the road. I just let the language live in my ears. And once your ear starts recognizing little sounds and words, you're finally ready to see what they look like. Now, I know you might be wondering whether this works for harder languages too, like Russian, Mandarin, Arabic, the ones that are further away from English. And the answer is yes, this works for any language. Now, you may need more time for languages with very different scripts, but the principle is the same. And this is where my language difficulty guide might help you out. It shows roughly how long different languages take to learn. Romance languages like French or Spanish sit in tier 1. Greek and Thai will take a little bit longer. The guide shows all of this so you can see where your language sits, and also shows how difficult it is depending on which other languages you know. There's a link to the difficulty guide below so you can check that out. People find that very, very useful. Whenever I say beginners should read, someone always snaps back, read what, Ollie? I can't understand anything. How on earth can I read? Fair question. Why would this work? Well, it shouldn't. But once your ear stops panicking quite so much, something counterintuitive starts to happen. Suddenly things start to get fun. Because stories enter the picture, and stories are where meaning comes alive. And this is where your homework at the beginning starts to pay off. That course or textbook you found with those little dialogues, they are perfect for reading and listening practice. So this is exactly how my story learning students do this. They get one tiny text at a time, they read it through, they listen to the audio, and they listen and read together at the same time. Not to try and memorize it, not to try and understand every word, to see and hear how the words connect. How does the sound of the language match the way it's written down? And as you get better at this, you can start reading one-page chapters of a simple story, like in one of these short story books. The little link between sound and print is where things start to click, and you'll be surprised how fast you start to follow the story of what you're reading. Not every word, but the gist. And then something magic happens. You spot a word you recognize. You catch a cheeky cognate, and a cognate is a word that looks in that language like it does in English, so you can kind of understand it. Or you hear a phrase for the third time and you think, hang on, I've seen that before. These moments start to become addictive, and you want to get as many of these moments as you can. The brilliant thing about stories is that stories give you repetition without feeling like study. So patterns just start showing up, and I know it sounds crazy, but when you do this, your brain absorbs the language without you even trying. Isn't that something? And that tiny spark of recognition feels so good, and that's where your confidence starts growing. So you're not learning disconnected pieces and hoping they fit together later like you do in most language schools, like study, 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 and then one day just put it all together. No, you're watching the language live and breathe from the start. Now, if your language has a different script or alphabet, like Korean, Japanese, Russian, Arabic, or Thai, you should learn that writing system from day one. And yes, this means it takes longer, but it's also essential, because if you're learning a new language, there's one thing you don't want to be in that language, and that is illiterate. You need to be able to read. So learning a new script is going to take time. Just start by learning enough to recognize the letters and hear how they sound as you read along. By doing it every day, you'll get used to it. Treat it like, I don't know, learning faces at a party. The more you see them, the more familiar they become. And then when you see them again at the next party, the next week, you're like, oh, I know you. Besides, who doesn't want to be the cool kid who can scribble beautiful letters in different languages? And by the way, if you're watching this thinking, okay, I get it, but what if I mess this up? Well, that's exactly why I created a free guide for you called the 10 Rules of Story Learning. And it's everything that protects you from the mistakes that quietly derail beginners. Stuff nobody warns you about until it's too late. Things like why you need to ignore most advice from native speakers, why it takes 17 repetitions before a word actually sticks, and the daily habit that beats big study sessions every single time. This is short, it's one quick read, and it gives you the confidence to know that you're not wasting time when you're studying. Honestly, if you apply even half of what's in these rules of story learning, you'll be ahead of most people who've been stuck for years. If you'd like a free copy of the 10 Rules of Story Learning, scan the QR code on the screen or grab it below, the link in the description. Maybe print it off and stick it up in that cool language home base that you're making. It's free and it'll save you months of spinning your wheels. Okay, so let's say now you are a few weeks into listening and reading. Eventually something in the stories you've been reading will start to bother you. Some word order that looks suspicious. Why is that word in front of that word or behind that word? A little ending to a verb that keeps changing. You're thinking, hang on, why did that verb look different in that other sentence over there? Good. That moment is your cue. Now, if you see something like this, you can go and look it up in a grammar book or something like that. Not go off and study grammar for 6 months, just look up what you've just seen, what you're curious about. Just enough to say, okay, oh right, that's what's going on, now I get it. Now usually this is the point where a lot of learners panic and run straight into grammar study. They try to memorize all the rules. And that is exactly when you risk making grammar something that becomes confusing, stressful, completely unhelpful, and makes you want to run for the hills. And look, I'm not anti-grammar, not for a second. I know it might seem that way sometimes, but really I'm not. I just think that most people go about it all wrong. Here's the thing, grammar becomes almost enjoyable, dare I say interesting, when you've already noticed the patterns yourself. Your brain's already kind of figured it out from the story or the text you've been reading. Then you are just confirming what you've seen in the rule book. But if you try to learn grammar like we used to at school, learning it from rules, from textbooks, from blackboards, I don't know, it feels like punishment, it's absolute misery. But also when you're learning from rules first, you don't really understand what you're learning. It's just like a maths equation. It also feels like punishment and it's absolutely miserable. So instead of jumping into grammar explanations, read and listen to your audios, your stories, your dialogues, let the curiosity simmer, and then when you're ready to look something up, go and look it up, and then figure out why the word is changing, because it's plural, because it's past tense. Look up what you're seeing to the point where you understand it, chalk that up as a win, and move on, get back to the reading and listening. Remember, grammar is a helper. It is not the be-all and end-all, and it is not a hill to die on. So use grammar, look up grammar, investigate grammar after you have seen it in your textbook and in your stories, not before. Give your brain a chance to enjoy those little aha moments, then trust that the rest will come with more listening, more reading, more stories, more input, more exposure. That's how grammar becomes helpful instead of painful, because you're not forcing it, you're recognizing it. And now the part that makes everyone's palms sweat. When do I get to start speaking? Because you may have noticed I haven't even mentioned speaking yet, and we're already weeks into our language learning project. And also speaking, well, it's kind of the point, right? That's what we're all learning a language for. Here is the easy answer to tell you when you should start speaking. Start speaking in your new language when you have just enough words to say the thing you want to say.
Like the stuff that's in your head, you've got to articulate, you've got to get it out somehow. So that's what I'm trying to do. ผมไปเรียนภาษาไทยครับ
Now for most people that's going to be around weeks 3, 4 or 5 once you've done some listening and reading daily and you've learned maybe 50 to 100 words and they're bouncing around in your head. But here's what I really need you to hear. Speaking is not some terrifying performance. Trust me on this, it does not have to be perfect. In fact, if your speaking is perfect, you've been waiting probably 5 years too long. The purpose of starting to speak is to get words out, to just say something. Now you can start with sending yourself voice notes or talking to yourself in the mirror. Talk out loud while you walk. I do this all the time. People think I'm mad walking down the street. Just start to feel what the language is like when it comes out of your mouth in verbal form. Once you feel ready, you could find a language partner or book a tutor online to practice your basic language with. Language partners are great because you're both trying to learn each other's language. It's a win-win conversation. And just use the words you already know. Make a mess. Speaking is supposed to be messy. That's where breakthroughs happen. Personally, I like to do this online. It means I don't have to go out. It's pretty straightforward. And I like to use tutors on places like LanguaTalk, where the stakes are low, the tutors are lovely, and nobody's judging you. They correct you gently. You learn things that would take ages to notice on your own. Starting to practice with a good tutor makes all the difference. If you've done the earlier phases properly, speaking might feel surprisingly natural, not effortless, not even good. Let's not kid ourselves. You've only been doing this for a few weeks at this point, but natural, because you're not trying to build sentences from thin air. You're not trying to just memorize a bunch of words and then robotically parrot them. You've been exposing your brain to the language. You've had language flooding over your ears and your brain for the last few weeks by reading and listening. What happens when you do it like this is that speaking can start to come out naturally because your brain has been getting used to it. This is the difference between textbook speaking, all stilted and robotic, and speaking from genuine understanding. One feels like acting, the other feels like you. The sooner that you try speaking, even before you feel ready, the easier everything else becomes. Nobody ever feels ready, trust me. You just start and confidence shows up later. Here's the fun part. You are not starting a new language anymore, you're actually in the game now. And unlike my 2-week Thai sprint, this time you'll actually keep it because habits stick and hype does not. So don't overthink what comes next. Keep the merry-go-round moving. Hear something, spot it later, try to say it out loud without falling over. That's all it is, tiny turns of the wheel. One day soon, something small will happen. You'll order a coffee, understand a joke, or reply without translating first, and you'll catch yourself thinking, oh, wow, this is actually working. And it sneaks up on you. And that moment is worth everything. And the best bit is that you're closer than you think. There's just one big problem left to solve. How are you actually going to fit your language learning into your busy schedule every day? Because if you don't crack that, life will sneakily steal everything you just built. And that's what my next video is about. The simple rule that protects your progress so you never fall off the wagon again. I'll see you over there. Don't miss it.